Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining. We have a very big audience tonight. There's still people coming in. We have more than 90 people at the moment, which is amazing. And it's great to see the photographers community and get you together for this talk, which is very important for us. But before kicking off with the topic, the main topic, I just want to give an introduction of ourselves for the ones that have not heard from us before. We are Moscow Collective. We are London-based group of photographers that work between commissions in architecture photography and also personal work dedicated to the documentation of the built environment. And it's myself, Francesco Russo, and the core with me of the collective is also Henry Boyd, which is gonna look after the tech bits of the talk tonight, and Luca Piforetti, who's gonna look after the chat. In the chat, you can throw any questions you want. We're gonna collect them, and then at the end of this talk, we're gonna put them for the panel, who are gonna try to give you the best answers. And so the panel tonight is composed by Reeve. Say hi, so everyone sees you. What's Head? Head is an architecture photographer. He's been in the industry for more than 25 years, so a lot of shoots behind him, I guess. And so yeah, architecture and interior photographers. And we have Graham Everitt, who's a copyright expert, and he collaborates with View Pictures and other stock agencies and takes care of all the licensing and copyright issues that go with the business. And Sophia Gibb, who's there she is, a picture researcher, and she's been working for over 30 years, so a lot of experience as well. And she's been working on publications and book and with publishers like Faden. So she's gonna tell us more about that part of the licensing. And so in general, thank you very much to View Pictures, and all the panel members are part of View Pictures. So thanks for being again an advocate for architecture photographers internationally. And so let's dive into the main topic, which is, as you all know, licensing, copyright, image usage, which is probably not the fanciest part of what we do, but it's actually very important. It's at the core of the photography business, and it's very important to know and how to handle and how to manage with copyright and image usage to present ourselves professionally in front of our clients. So I think that we shouldn't wait more and just kick off with the first questions. So we've got here Ed, Graham, and Sophia, and I would leave the word to you. And I think that the best way to start, considering that you've been in the industry for very long, is just to hear from you how the licensing has changed over the years, because we all know that with the advent of the digital age, the image usage has changed a lot. So it would be great to see, from the licensing point of view, how it's evolved. And probably Sophia, probably she has the longest experience in the industry, so she might know well about it.
Yeah, thanks very much, Francesco. I would say probably the best way to start off, because there are people listening in this evening who are maybe completely new to the industry and don't know the origins of the shift from analog to digital. So I would say the intrinsic value of your work as a product and your copyright ownership in that work actually just remains unchanged, unless, of course, you assign your copyright over. But it is the control over the work itself where licensing has probably changed most, and the new options for where and how that work is actually reproduced. So a first point of change within the industry was the evolution of the photograph from analog to digital. capture by digital camera or increasingly by telephone camera, and the means of its physical transfer from photographer to client and possible syndication beyond that point. And I would just say that today everybody is capable of digital capture, plus a secondary sideline revenue maybe, but not everyone is trained as a photographer and make it their profession and therefore their sole means of livelihood. So that is one of the primary shifts. A secondary point of change and a major evolutionary factor really is post-production by digital means and the actual transmission of your digital images. And a third point of change is the increasing digital versions of the end use. And that also applies in editorial publishing as well. So the photo medium itself has changed, the type of end use has changed somewhat, and the licensing needs to adapt to that. So it's not as it used to be, but the content of a good and the value of a good photograph certainly hasn't changed. So the issues relating to basic economics and operating costs within printed editorial publishing are affecting licensing fees dramatically today, as I'm sure everybody is aware. So print magazine rates for editorial reproduction have decreased. Print book publishers do not have advertising revenue to boost their budgets, and the real costs of paper, printing, design, production, staff costs, shipping, logistics, etc. for book publishers have gone up over the years. So the fees paid for image use have been reduced in order to make that end product still affordable. So there's a shift to digital editorial publications now, as they are seen to be less expensive to produce and distribute. I mean, just as an analogy, my colleague Graham and I were talking about this the other day. Back in, I think it was 2011, the image rate that book publishers were paying for full page, all territories, around £225 for an image. I mean, you would be very lucky now to get £100, £150 for that, because a lot of publishers are trying to add value to what they're purchasing with digital add-ons. So really, that is the background. And I would just say very quickly why photographers should have a good licensing knowledge is a knowledge of the value of your photograph and an awareness of its worth in the marketplace. So you need to consider how and where you license your work. And I think the most simplistic way of me explaining that is a tier system. So your primary tier is between the photographer and your commissioner. So that would be maybe an architect or a designer, and you agree a license and terms and conditions between yourselves for that. And I know that Ed and Graham are going to talk at length about that. And I would just stick my hand up and say, be very careful at that primary point not to give away all your rights to architects and designers, as you potentially cut off your secondary tier of licensing, which brings me on to my secondary tier. So that would be photographer and a representative agent. I mean, in this case, I am not representing View Pictures, but I'm talking with my photo library hat on. And that is basically an option for photographers to have a photo library contracted to represent their work to third parties. And that's on two levels: to commercial clients as contractors, and third parties such as editorial clients, book publishers, magazines, etc. And we can talk about the pluses and minuses of positives and challenges furthermore.
Thanks, Sophia. And do you, Graham, or add something to add to it?
Well, I think it's when we're dealing with, I deal with more contractor licenses. So I'm dealing with the third parties who possibly worked with the architect, your client, on a project. And what Sophia just said is really interesting, is that I wish it was different, but the fees have changed. I mean, even 5 years ago, if a contractor contacted us at View Pictures and wanted to use the pictures, no matter how they wanted to use in social media, print, for a display, for a trade show they were doing, the starting point was £350. That was it. You know, you had almost a buyout where they could use the images however they wanted, and £350 is now seems a lot more money than it did 5 years ago, and that's what we're looking at now. Is it a lot of the people we're dealing with View? I mean, Sophia's mentioned book publishers and editorial, but when you're dealing with a contractor who's worked on a project, they're not always big companies, they're not always large companies. They're not like the architect. They could be a landscape gardener. They could just be a company who were maybe contracted to put in the windows or do the woodwork or whatever, you know, whatever reason they were contracted for. And the big point now is that if you charge £350, you won't sell the image. The image is, you're not going to make a sale, and so the price of an image has come down, and the worth of an image, although it's wrong, I don't agree with this in the slightest, the worth of an image in my sort of reckoning is actually increased. Actually, your images are worth more than ever because there's so much crap out there, let's be honest. You know, there's a lot of royalty-free libraries out there. There's a lot of libraries, aggregated libraries, who sell pictures that aren't of the highest quality and are very generic in nature. And with you guys, architectural photographers, you have an amazing specialist subject that no one else has. And so when you're contacted by a contractor or anybody, even a publisher or an editorial client, they can't go anywhere else to get that picture. Simple as that. If they want a particular project that Ed has shot or Edmund has shot or whoever else, and they can't go to it. And when you start to sort of charge the fees that we want to charge, you simply can't get them anymore. But the other side of that is people do sometimes buy more images. So instead of buying 1 or 2 images, they might buy 10, 11 or 12. And in that case, you have to sort of lower the price and give them prices they can afford it. And it's the old adage, really, is something better than something of nothing. If you're starting to sort of, if you're quoting at £350 and they say no to you straight away, and you say, okay, what can you afford? Can you do it for 100? Can we do it for 150? And if they say, yep, okay, we'll have 5 images, then fantastic. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think that's a better way of doing it.
Thanks, Graham.
Hello, I'm Ed. For those of you who've just joined, because I see there's quite a few more joining.
Yeah.
I'm a photographer, like most of you, I assume. I haven't done a talk before, so forgive me if I seem a bit nervous, especially in front of all of you lot. But I wanted to be part of this because it's a really important subject. I'm not an authority on it, but I have my own experiences that I can share that you will either relate to or learn from if you're new to this. But the most important outcome, I think, for this evening is that we all share an understanding of what licensing and copyright is. And as someone commented on the post, I think on Instagram for this talk, which I thought put it perfectly, we all need to be on the same page. This is not a fight for our rights. We don't have to be militant about it. It's simply about reaching an agreement with our clients and perhaps educating some of our clients about what has long been written in law. And it's about fairness and responsibility. There does seem to be a change happening here in the UK, which is positive. There's certainly more awareness among my clients, and it's our duty to spread that awareness and accelerate that change that's happening by supporting each other and informing our clients. Now, we seem to be way behind the US on image usage and licensing. They're on it, and it's rare to find people infringing copyright over there because of the heavy penalty involved. And I'm not proposing we go handing out heavy penalties to all infringers over here, but all of us will get on to how to tackle infringement later, I think, in the conversation.
Yeah, but do you think, because you just said that the awareness is sort of is increasing lately, so would you say that in the past it used to be like sort of higher like general awareness of the meaning of, you know, image rights and all that, and then it suddenly decreased and now it's coming back again?
Well, my experience is that it was much less. People didn't, or if they did, I wasn't so aware. It's not something I was taught at college. I wasn't aware of some of my rights to my images. I would do a job, I'd deliver the pictures to my client, and they would then use those. And what I discovered some years into my career was that some of my clients were selling my images, often doing multiple sales to all the contractors and suppliers involved. And not only making back the fee that I was charging them, but actually making a profit from my pictures. So once I became aware of this, I realized that we needed to have a discussion about rights and licensing.
And so, I mean, I think this brings us to the topic of educating our clients, and because if the feeling is that it's down to the photographer to tell the people that hire us how things work and what they can and can't do with our work. And so how do you do that? And because, you know, when you agree on a shoot with someone, you kind of issue a contract or, you know, a licensing agreement. How do you do that, and how it works in the relationship with the client?
I think Ed, I mean, I think what I mentioned here is Ed and me have sort of spoke about this at length, and some of us, the photographers here, would be starting out, some would be old hands, and some would be in the middle. And I think what's more and more important, particularly I've seen during lockdown, is that people have struggled, not just photographers, but your clients have struggled. You know, they haven't got much money. There's not much going on at the moment. And one thing is a worrying concern is they're asking for more and more, but want less, don't less and less for it. So I've seen more and more clients asking for copyright, for instance. They want to keep the copyright, whereas they don't need to keep the copyright. When you actually sort of speak to them and say, well, why do you want the copyright? Why do you want to keep it? They say, well, there are images, you've shot them for us, so I want the images. But when you actually start to speak to them and say, well, what do you want them for? What do you need them for? Because if they do keep the copyright, as a photographer, you should be looking at almost doubling your fee. Well, actually, no, you should be looking at doubling your fee to keep the copyright. And what I actually hope is that none of you would actually give away your copyright, because if you did, you can't place them with a photo library. You can't sell them onto third-party clients. You can't do anything with them. And what I'm worried about a little bit is a race to the bottom. And when we've been through this awful thing that we've been through recently, is that your clients are going to start to ask for more, and they're going to want you to charge them less for it. And what we all need to do as photographers, well, I'm not a photographer, I'll hold my hands up, I'm not a photographer, but what we all need to do, you're not in competition with each other. You can help each other, you can speak to each other, and you can be each other's friend. And what would be great is your terms and conditions all point to the same thing, is that you're educating, as Ed said, your client. You're not trying to catch them out. You're not trying to say, these are my terms and conditions. If you do X, Y, and Z, we're going to punish you because I'm going to send you an infringement fee or whatever else. What you want to do is stop the infringement happening in the first place by saying, here's my terms and conditions. They're reasonable. They're very sensibly laid out. And this is what you can do with the images. And that works. And then they will understand that they can't keep the copyright. They cannot give the images to a third party. What length of license can they have? Is it in perpetuity? Is it 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years? And you guys need to sort of speak to each other and say, this is what we stand for, and we're not going to change that. And these are our rights, and they're reasonable rights. We're not being unreasonable. And so, as Ed says, you're educating your client, and it's for much of their benefit as it is for your benefit.
And clients get this. When you start explaining, those that don't know, in fact, actually most of the job inquiries I get now, clients ask me about the licensing. So they're aware of it. And those that don't know, then we just have to inform them. But when you inform them, they get it, because it's just about fairness. If you say, look, these pictures, once you've paid this fee, you can use those to promote yourself as a practice in any media. Now I give in perpetuity, because I'm not going to go back to that practice in 5 or 10 years time and say, you have to pay me another fee for those pictures. That's just not going to rub. So, you know, charge enough fee that those pictures are for their use forever. But what you have to stipulate and be certain about is that they're only for their use. They can't pass them on to any third party. They can't share, give, sell them to their contractors, their suppliers. Mm. And if there are any contractors or suppliers interested in having those images, then they refer them back to you, and you've made their job really easy, because if they get a call or an email, they just forward it to you. So their hands are done.
Yeah, I agree, Ed, and I think that's a really valid point, that at the point of commission, when everything is made clear in a contract or contract and terms and conditions, be very specific about what uses the architect or the design company or PR company, whoever it is who's done the commission, what they're getting out of it. And I think the cutoff point, I absolutely agree, is when it comes to third-party use. There is a discussion of architects being able to use material for their own promotion, and that's well and good, and that's fair. But perhaps we need to explore where that promotion starts and where it perhaps is a grey area beyond that. And I think once it teeters into the realms of third-party use for financial gain, i.e. that photograph that you have taken, which was commissioned for an architect or a design house, once that leaves that architect and it goes to a publishing house for use in a book, yes, it's promoting their work, but the bottom end of the scale is that that publisher, whether it's a magazine, whether it's a book publisher, whatever it may be, or it might be used on a website or something as an ancillary use, if they are getting a product at the end of it which is saleable, then that is a very questionable end use. And I think that's the area which is very grey and we need to look at.
It can be a very simple conversation. You just say, if any third party stands to generate more business and therefore income from that image, then it's only fair and right that they pay a fee. And everyone gets that. No one can.
Well, you're right. And what is, I think, again, architectural photographers have this more. If you're a food photographer or product or a fashion photographer, you don't have this. It's a very niche thing to architectural photographers worldwide, not just UK, Europe, you know, America, Asia, and everywhere else. Is that if those third parties, if they want the images, then the architect has commissioned, or your client has commissioned them. They've paid for those images. So why on earth did the third party then just say, right, okay, we've worked on this project, we're going to use these images, you've paid for them, but we're going to use them. And it's kind of like a bit of an old, you know, okay, you can have the images, but they shouldn't. In no other industry does this happen. You don't pass your, well, we shouldn't do, but you shouldn't pass your license onto Amazon, Netflix, or anything else onto anyone else. Okay, maybe we do, but you know, but you know, it shouldn't be done. And so those third parties should be paying for the images. And that's another interesting point here, is that they're all potential clients of yours. So if they do use those images, again, the education comes into it, that they need images. They've obviously got a use for those images, and and they're working on different projects, not just a project that maybe they've taken from this particular shoot, but there's other projects too. So you can turn these guys into a client through education. So when you speak to them, say, look, you've used the images, you shouldn't have done. It's not actually your fault, because you've practiced due diligence. You've maybe contacted the architect, you've contacted your client, and you've said, can we use these images? And they said, yeah, fine, have them. So it's the architect or your client who is originally at fault. But the way you deal with the third party is you don't want to punish them for using the images, because then the photographer ends up looking like the bad guy, which they never should. It's not the photographer's fault. But the point is these guys could be turned into a client as a ready resource there for you to exploit.
We had a case like this, didn't we, Graham? Last year.
Yeah, Ed had a lighting company, and they'd used Ed's images, and
but they hadn't just used, it was once I found a couple of images by using a sort of tracking engine, and then when we went on their website, there was loads of projects that I'd photographed that had their lighting in that I was unaware of, and they used them all. So we got in touch and said, look, this isn't right. You know, I mean, they had hundreds of projects, not just mine, probably many of all of yours on their website. We said, look, you can't do this. You haven't paid for this. And they got really bolshy about it. And they said, right, we're going to speak to our solicitor, blah, blah, blah. Spoke to their solicitor, who told them how stupid they'd been. And they actually came back to us and said, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, because we've been showing the error of our ways and realized just what the financial implications of our misunderstanding is. So yeah, we'd like to use your images, so we're prepared to pay for them. And by the way, we've just been on your website and seen that you've also shot this, this, and this, which our lighting was in. Can we buy those as well?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, upselling.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, yeah, these guys are all potential clients. And I think what we all need to remember is that no one infringes on purpose. No one wants to receive a copyright infringement letter for thousands of pounds and go, oh, look, it's Monday morning, I've just had a coffee, fantastic. Look, I've just had a bill for £4,000 for using an image on a website. No one wants that. So the way you approach them is sleep on it, take a deep breath and contact them and say, look, let's charge you for the image use, and then let's see where we can go going forward, because it's very easy as a photographer to be very bullish about it and say, we're going to charge you, and this is an extra revenue stream for me, and take the short-term view. Whereas the longer-term view is these guys are clients of yours, and they could very easily become long-term clients of yours. But it all comes back to that main point at the start that we've talked about, and Sophia mentioned, is having a good set of terms and conditions to go with your contract. A contract is a movable feast because it has your fees in it. It has your post-processing fees. It has your, how long are you going to be on site? Are there model releases? Are there property releases? That's your contract, which could change for each client. But your terms and conditions really are removable, and it should be the same for everybody out there. No matter where you are, no matter where you shoot, it should be the same. And you should, you know, if you're all working from the same document, or from the same, you know, from the same set of terms and conditions, then it's going to be much easier for all of you. And you're not in the wrong, photographers. If you know, you're all listening, if this situation does arrive, it's the people who've passed your images on. They're the guys who are in the wrong.
So Graham, I mean, you've been working with many photographers on their contracts and helped them. And so what do you think that are, you know, for everyone listening, the main things that have to be on a contract? Just, you know, everyone can check if they're doing it right or not.
Well, first of all, and it still surprises me with not so much of architectural photographers, because I have to say, I think as a group of photographers, you're on the ball more than many other photographers in different areas, is who keeps copyright. You do, obviously, and it still surprises me that it's even an issue quite often, that the question even has to be asked. The photographer keeps the copyright, and even if a client wants to keep the copyright, as I mentioned before, there's no reason for them to have the copyright. They don't need it. They're your images. You want to self-promote them. You want to put them on your website. You may want to put them with a stock agency. You may want to do third-party license. So they're your images. So that's one point. Another point is third-party rights. We've already discussed this, and I'm sure you all know about it. You've shot those images for your client. Unless you've shared the commission with somebody else, those are your client's images. You may want to give an extra couple of licenses with the images, whereby the PR company or the designer can use them as well, but they cannot certainly be sent on to every single Tom, Dick and Harry who've worked on a project.
So include a specific number of licenses with your fee.
Yeah, 2, I think, Ed. Is that what you do?
Include 2.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense to me. Obviously, the architect is going to want a copy for their promotion, and their client is going to want a copy of the images generally. But as long as you stipulate and say, look, my fee from the beginning, when you're at the negotiating and the quoting stage, you say my fee includes 2 licenses, which usually go to the architect and the client, but can be designated however you choose. And that also gives the client the benefit that you could split the fee. So if, you know, some photographers, you know, are charging above £1,000 for a day, you could then split that between them if they're a smaller client. And so they're happy, they're paying 50% of the quoted fee, they get the usage they want, so does their client. And then if anyone else wants them, the full set, you charge them 50% of the original fee. So everyone's paid the same. And you think back to some of the jobs, some of the bigger jobs that some of you have done, and how many people are involved in those jobs. You know, you've got the contractor, all the people who've supplied stuff, the lighting, the furniture, the tiling, the flooring. People have put the plaster on the wall. There's so many. That's multiple sales. You know, if you can find 10 suppliers, or if you put them with an image library like View Pictures and they can search for them for you, as they often do, you've got 10, you know, you could get 10 times your original fee. So
yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, I think it's a gold mine. It's a gold mine, really. And you know, I think, you know, that's where, you know, a picture library helps, because, you know, they take care of, you know, getting in touch with the parties involved, but it's something we can do on our own if we want, and, you know, reach out to whoever contributes to the project and relicense these images. So it's a really important thing to keep in mind. But I mean, you've been mentioning rates, Ed, and I think one of the reasons why we are talking about this is that I think many photographers in here can say that the industry is becoming more crowded, probably, and architects, especially, you know, young and small practices, often don't have the budget to pay for a professional photo shoot. So from my experience, I'm seeing that sometimes photographers, to get their foot in the door, they just tend to undercut their value, which is probably not the right approach, because I think that's, I mean, bottom line, I'll be very, very open. We are all competitors, we know that. But I think it's very important to get together and talk about these things, because we are still a community of professionals that want to deliver high quality photography for our clients. So that should be really the main thing to do. And I think that, you know, if undercutting our value is the way to get your foot in, is not really, you know, the right approach, because ultimately architects and designers should choose their photographer based on what they deliver, on the quality of their images, and not just because they charge £100 more, £100 less. That's not really the way, I think. And so I think this is a great opportunity to kind of give, especially to the new and upcoming photographers, sort of guidance on what are the rates, because honestly, no one talks about it. We know how it is in the UK. I mean, there's people from all over the world here, but it's really difficult to talk about money, and we want to take the chance to kind of give a sort of guidance, which is not at all a way of saying you should do this and that. Everyone's free to do whatever they want. But, you know, especially, as I said, for upcoming photographers, it's good to know how the industry goes and what's, you know, a fair way of charging. So Ed, what do you think?
It's really tough at the moment.
I know, but
and you know, the best advice I've got for all the new and up and coming photographers is they should go and find something else, a different profession to do.
You're getting rid of the competition.
I'm only here to try and dissuade people from continuing in this profession.
No, by the way,
I would just say that you're more likely to make money out of your commissioning stage than you are out of editorial payments.
Before you go on, just a quick one. I mean, we know that in like other parts of the world it works differently. So, I mean, we refer mainly to the UK and European markets, but you know, it's still a guidance for whoever comes from other parts of the world.
There's what, 50,000 registered architects in the UK alone, and how many have we got on here now? We've got about 100 people. If we can all agree here now that we just divide them up amongst ourselves, that's what, 250 each. We should be all right.
That's enough.
Yeah. So there's plenty out there. We are a bit in competition, but that doesn't mean to say that we've got to start undercutting each other, because then we begin the race to the bottom, and then it's no good for anyone. you know,
yeah,
many.
I would just cite on that point, probably the most obvious example is the music industry, and you know, streaming and what music artists get through streaming, which is a pitiful, you know, amount of money, and it means that they have to have the music streamed a colossal amount of times to get any meaningful amount of money back, and we certainly don't want it getting that bad with sales through secondary sources like to contractors, or through photo libraries, for instance, to editorial users. It is very competitive, and I think also there are two tiers within that secondary licensing with photo libraries. You've got the big aggregator type libraries, which they serve their purpose and they fulfill their niche with a lot of photographers who are not necessarily principally, particularly architectural photographers. They're not necessarily trained. They do it as a hobby, and they produce a perfectly adequate middle of the road photograph, which is sold, stack them high, sell them cheap sort of analogy. And I think there is a difference between that and what you guys are doing. The worth in your product, your photographs, the training that you've put into it, the equipment that you've had to buy and or hire, that should be reflected in your fee, and even in the secondary fee that you get through licensing to third parties for, you know, magazine or editorial use. You know, don't be afraid to stand firm on your fees and say, no, this is the worth of my product, and it needs to be commensurate with what you've put into it.
Yeah, because it's really about self-confidence, isn't it, at the end? But going back to the sort of guidance we had
about everyone, about the young ones giving up, look, we're really lucky. Okay, this is a fantastic job, and we all know it, and we all love it. But just because we love it doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't get paid properly for it. It's a profession. It's not a trade. It's something that we've trained for and had years of experience and built up to create good images. You can get cheaper anything. I had a client who wanted me to photograph a sofa, and it was a really expensive sofa. And when I told him how much it would cost, he said, well, I can get a photographer cheaper. And I said, I can get a sofa cheaper from IKEA. Well, you can always get something cheaper, but it just depends on the quality. So we actually, to talk about fees, View Pictures did a survey a few years ago of 31 of their photographers. Actually, it was 32, but someone's fees were so high that I just sort of discounted them. So the results from this group of 31 photographers, and they did vary quite a lot. I think the lowest fee that was charged was about 500 quid, but they would add £150 on for their retouching. So even then, that was 650. So that's the lowest fee in the View photographers.
Yeah, that's quite low. But let's take
that was just one. Okay,
yeah.
The majority of people charge about 800 quid, and then various amounts for their retouching. So I worked out the average, and it worked out about £1,400 is the average that a photographer is charging. And the average number of shots seems to be about 20, 25 finished retouch shots delivered for about 1,400 quid. So that gives you, you know where you are on that scale. Mm-hmm. I don't think even newbies shouldn't be charging anything less than 800 quid. Now you know you can issue 2 licenses with your work. You can say, well, it's not 800 quid. It's only going to cost you 400 quid because your client's going to pay the other 400. That's not a lot of money for 20 odd images.
Well done, Ed, because not many photographers would, I know working with a lot of them who would speak so candidly and talk about fees, but looking at the comments on the side here, that's really good to hear that you are happy to say that, because if someone doesn't say it, then no one knows what each other are charging. You know, you're not a monopoly, but what you're doing is giving guidelines. That's brilliant.
This is why View did the survey, and I think the Mass Collective should do one, because there's a much wider scope of professionals here.
Yeah, we can think about it. I mean, I know that last year, I think it was the APN Almanac trying to do one, which I've never seen any, result released. I don't know why, but it's something we can do. But I mean, also, from my understanding, I think what's important.
I thought I was just going to say, make the point that the survey was anonymous, so nobody knows who's charging what.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, that's totally fair. But no, I think that in general, what you said is very fair. I mean, and if we take a standard shoot of one full day with 20-25 pictures, I think 800 is the bare minimum that everyone should charge, even if you're an upcoming photographer, because at the end, we are delivering high quality imagery. It doesn't matter what gear we use and how much time it takes to do that. It's the final result that matters, and it doesn't matter if you've been shooting for 1 year or 5 years. It's the value of the images is the same to the client. So that's the point, I think.
And a way to work out whether you're charging the right amount is if you're getting 100% of the commissions you quote for, then you're charging too little. You want to be getting about 80% of them. And, you're going to lose 20%, but then they'll go and find someone who's slightly younger and more inexperienced, and everyone moves up the chain. And that's how it should work.
Thanks, Ed.
Everyone's taking notes. That was good.
Yeah. Everyone, I see everyone, scribbling with the notepad.
We need to have these conversations.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's great that we are here with like more than 100 photographers talking about this.
Not many other photographers to do that, Ed. But I work with food photographers and fashion photographers. No one else wants to talk about fees. So, well, bravo, Ed. I have to say.
I was also just going to make the point that that fee comparison as an average may not be so comparable in different countries. Different countries might have a greater or lesser, sustainability for that within their marketplace.
And Sophia, but we know basically when we talk about these fees, generally, I mean, from my point of view, what we give to the architects is obviously, as we said, not the copyright. It's generally a marketing license, and usually that includes also an editorial license, because we understand that architects basically use editorial as a marketing tool. So I think it's commonly accepted by now that editorial has to be included in the licenses. Otherwise, architects don't accept to work with us, because they want to see their photos on the projects on Design, on Art Daily, and all that. But
it's important to keep it simple for them.
Yeah, okay, so that's key.
If you list all the things that they can use the pictures for, and it's going to accommodate all of their needs, then it's very acceptable.
No, absolutely. I think, simplicity is key, because, we want to do our job, which is photography. We don't want to spend time, with documents and all that, which is, terrible, but still important.
That's my job.
But yeah, of course, it's your job. Otherwise, we would be doing what you do. But what I wanted to ask Sophia is that there's probably a different story with publications, with books, custom publications, which is not really editorial. So in that case, when we give this license for marketing and editorial use, but then comes up the opportunity of a publication with, say, Faden, because you've worked with them, so you know very well how it works. How is that? I mean, is there a chance to get paid for that custom publication, or you think it's, how is the market evolving in that sense?
I haven't worked within a publishing house doing commissioning of photography for a long time, so I can't say on the inside of the.
No, but I'm not talking about commissioning a photographer for a publication. I'm saying I do a photo shoot for an architect. I take a picture of a building, and then someone wants to make a book on the architecture of London, and they want the picture from myself that I took it. So is it something that we still can make, you know, some revenue out of it, or how is it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, again, it goes back to my sort of analogy right at the beginning, which is this very, sort of very simplistic approach, but a kind of two-tier approach, which is a primary tier, whatever you've agreed with your architect, and whether it includes publication rights, or more importantly, if you hold on to your rights for third-party use in a saleable commodity, then that could be a direct sale from yourself to a publisher, or probably an easier route is to go through a copyright, a photo library such as Vue. There are other ones, but basically they will license your work to editorial end clients. So whether that's magazines or book publishers, and one of the plus points of doing that is that they already have established very good relationships with those publishers. So another thing I would recommend to young photographers coming into the business, link up with a good editor, link up with a good author, get to know who they are in the business, because if you can even just get one of your pictures in one of those books or magazine features, that will, if it's a good relationship and they like your work, it can lead on to more. And you know, you could have a book publisher come back and say, actually, we really like your work and we would like to commission you to do a whole book, and that would be fantastic. But yeah, there are positives and there are pitfalls. You know, the positives nowadays is that with wider digital options, the publishers are not just print. The publishers are also providing web-based digital platforms for their media. You've got digital distribution of your images, and you know, there's a positive that they have social media channels promoting those publications as well, so your pictures get seen by a wider audience. The negatives, I think, are that, as we've described, you know, the pinch point of print editorial is that the fees are not good. They've decreased. But I think, again, if we will stick together rather than being bamboozled by publishers saying, right, we're producing a massive book and therefore we've got a tiny budget per picture. It's a bit like you taking your supermarket trolley around, I don't know, Tesco's or Sainsbury's or wherever, and stacking it high, but getting to the till and saying, oh, actually, I can't afford to pay that amount. I can only afford to pay a bit less. You need to stand firm. And often we have publishers coming to Vue asking for all sorts of ancillary rights, rights in perpetuity, which they don't necessarily need, but also very worryingly, a few publishers have been asking for rights which may not even be known, and they want that written into the contract. And I think it's much easier, as Ed and Graham were discussing earlier, keep it simple, keep it very simple. We tend not to sign publishers' contracts. We say, no, if you would like to use pictures that are of good quality from Vue in various books or magazines, these are the terms, and you agree to our terms and the fee that's applicable to that. And using the pictures in magazines and book publishing, you know, there's a sliding scale according to how the end use is, how that picture is going to be used, as to what fee and what license is agreed.
But if this is, you know, mainly if it happens through, you know, a picture library that manages our work. But what happens if a publisher approaches us directly and asks for, you know, for a license of one of our pictures? Would you be able to give us some sort of guidance of how to understand what are the rates and how they work in the editorial and publication world? Say, for example, if we get asked to publish to get a picture for a cover of a book or for a full spread of a magazine, do you have some sort of guidance for that?
Yeah, I would say that's changed hugely, sadly, over the years as well. But you know, a starting point is the end product. Is it a commercial product? Is it a commercial book? Is it something that's actually being produced for charity? Then you've got a general idea of where you're going. So is it for sale or is it not? What are the overall number of pictures in the book? And is it aimed at an educative market, educational books that have to be affordable for students? Or is it going to be high end? Is it going to be a luxe coffee table type book, which is aimed at a very, very different market and you know, different pricing for the overall product? So I would say the parameters for just grading an idea of the worth of that picture in terms of licensing and the fee that goes with that is if you start at the size that the picture is going to be used. So scalable, either on page or on screen. Is it going to be tiny weeny, or is it going to be a full page picture? Is it going to be a DPS, a double page spread? Also the placement, is it going to be inside the book? Is it going to be on the front cover? Is it going to be on the back? So placement is prominent, and that is scalable. And also just think about territories. Think about the distribution of that book or that magazine. You know, what sort of territories is it going to be sold in? If it's just going to be one country and one language, then that will command obviously a lower fee than if you're looking at worldwide and all territories and multi-languages. Print run, that's another point as well. A lot of book publishers will start at a fairly conservative print run of maybe 3,000 copies, going up to maybe 5,000 copies, 10,000 copies, and it sort of tends to jump up incrementally from that point. A really big print run would be really 30,000 or 50,000 plus. Two elements of control for your pictures in terms of that license would be duration. Can you control how long that product will be, your picture will be in that product, i.e. sort of 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or are the publishers asking for in perpetuity? And another control factor would be if you just agree for one edition. Now that edition could have a very big print run, but it's still one edition. And when the publisher starts, you know, finding that they've got a very successful product and it's going to go into multi editions and be reformatted in different formats, you know, that's a whole different ballgame. So problems and challenges, you know, when you've got publishers requesting all formats, all editions in perpetuity, and for options not yet thought up, then that's a problem. But I would say historically, Graham and I were talking about this earlier, you know, about 10 years ago, you'd be looking at, for a full page picture, worldwide, multi-languages, for one edition, you'd probably be looking at a healthy £200 or so. Nowadays, if it's a full page picture, you know, for those sort of language rights, worldwide territories, and limited to one edition, you know, you're looking at around £100, and anything that's used smaller, say up to half page, you're looking around sort of £50, £75. If you're going to one of the big aggregator sites, then you will find that there are publishers who have multi-deals just with those aggregators. They won't come to individual photographers, they won't come to individual photo libraries, because they know they can get the middle of the road photographs and they can probably get them for £25 to £40 a picture. Again, as you guys were saying earlier, you know, we're not trying to undercut each other, we're just looking for something that's fair, and you've got a specialist product and it needs to be recompensed.
People can always afford to pay something for use of images, even if it's a one-man band who comes to you and says, look, I built the shelving in that place and it's just me, can I use that picture? He can probably afford 50 quid or something for an image. You know, it's the principle, you don't just give away your images. It's interesting that Sophia was talking about the working out the price of an image by the print run, i.e. how many people are going to buy that book or see that book. Now, it's a shame that we can't apply the same rules to social media, because social media has a much bigger audience. So, you know, you get clients, and Francesco, someone sent a really interesting link earlier about a guy who was talking, and maybe we can share it on the forum.
Yeah, I can put it.
Yeah, you should share it, because everyone should see that. It makes a really valid point, because we've all had clients come to us and say, we'd really like to use your pictures. We're not going to use them on the website or marketing. We just want to share them with our followers on social media. Social media is everything now. It's like, how many people buy magazines or go to your website? Not that many, but you've got loads of people. And also it's a captive audience. That brand doesn't just have 1,000 followers. They have 1,000 followers that are interested in their brand. So they've got, it's a captive audience. So that's really valuable. But yet people just think, oh, well, it's just social media. We'll let them use it. I don't know how, I don't know the answer to that. I'm just putting it out there as a question.
I just put it here in the chat. Yeah, the guy makes a good point. I think it's more related to what he says to more commercial photography, like products, or, you know, architecture is a bit different, but still it's, you know, people tend to undervalue social media, but it's really, you know, the main thing right now. So you're totally right, Ed. Well, we are going towards the end, but we've got a last one that I want to ask you guys. We've already kind of introduced this one earlier, and it's about infringements, which is, you know, when things get a bit complicated. We obviously, if we have a strong contract and we are good at explaining what clients can and can't do, it shouldn't happen, but we still know that it does. So I want to ask you guys what tools we have to fight these infringements specifically, because I know, like, for example, we've got some companies like, you know, Pixie, CopyTrack, that are these online services that's, you know, does the research through the web to find, you know, where images are used. But sometimes it's difficult because you don't want to just click a button and say, give me the money, because as you said, guys, before, it's not really how we want to approach these potential new clients. So what tools do we have to kind of tackle these issues?
We've got Graham.
No. Well, strap in, isn't it? It's infringements. I mean, the way there's three ways of dealing with infringement. You can go through your stock agency if you have one, and they should be really dealing with it on your behalf. Not all stock agencies do, but some, you know, a lot of them do now. They see it as quite an important revenue stream. Actually, I'd almost say it's taken over from editorial and contractual sales for some of them. I know some photo libraries who rely on infringement sales. And then, as Francesco mentioned, you've got your image infringement companies which is quite an amazing thing, actually. I mean, 5 years ago, who'd ever heard of an image infringement company, a company that's making money from chasing up your images and sending out infringement bills to various companies? I mean, if you'd have told me 5 years ago this, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about. It's incredible, really. But it's if you think about it, it's logical. I mean, but it's an amazing thing. The only thing is with infringement companies, I would say, is that they can be rather aggressive. They're excellent if you want to use, if you are dealing with an infringer outside your territory, say if you're in North America, you're in Asia, Europe, or the UK, and the infringer is not in your geographic area, use an infringement company, because they're going to have agents all around the world, legal representatives in various different countries, and they can sort of deal with these infringements for you, because it's impossible. If you're dealing with somebody in a country that isn't your own, you've got no chance, because you don't know the law there, you don't know the due process, you don't know what to do. So it's best to leave it to them. But I think for the architectural photographers, again, you have a niche market, and you have these third-party infringers, and not many other photographer groups have this. So the main thing is to contact. How have they got the pictures? The first thing you want to look at is how have they got the images, and more likely, if someone is infringing your images, they've been involved with the original project somehow or somewhere. And I think I've already touched on this, so apologies for repeating myself. But So if you go in all guns blazing and you say, right, you've used my pictures and you've been a very naughty boy, and I'm going to send you a infringement fee for the use of my images. You may not have given me my moral rights. You may not have credited me. So I'm going to give you another fee for that. And I'm going to charge you for, say, an image detection fee, because I've had to take time to try and find this. I can charge you for flagrancy. You should know better. But there's various fees you can add on to it. But the first thing that third party is going to do is call your client and go, you sent me these pictures last week. You said they were okay to use. And then your client is going to get on the phone to you guys and say, what the bloody hell are you doing? You've shot these images for me, and you've now sent a bill for £5,000 to somebody who I worked on this project with. And it isn't fair. It really is not fair. But the photographer always, I would say, in my experience, 99.9% of the time ends up looking like the bad guy. You're not the bad guy. It's the people who sent the images to the third party who's the bad guy. So what do you do? So the first thing I would do is contact your client and say, look, you've been a naughty boy, a naughty girl. You sent these images. This wasn't in the original contract. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to contact them. I'm not going to punish them. I'm not going to charge them an infringement fee. I'm not going to charge them a fee for not crediting me. I just want payment for these images, that they've used them on their website in print material. Well, you won't know they've used them in print material. You've probably only seen them on their website. And then you will contact them and you say, look, fair's fair. You know, you've used these images. There's been some kind of miscommunication, but I do need to charge you for using these images. You can charge them an extra fee for non-credit. You can say, this is the fee for using them without my authorization. You can then charge them an extra fee if you want to continue using them. So really, they should stop using them there and then you charge another fee if they want to continue licensing them. That's sort of to the letter, to the law. It is in the UK, and I think in the European Union, and it probably is similar elsewhere. America, for all those who are watching, are much better at this than the UK and Europe. You know, less people infringe in North America because they're all over it. You know, they know not to because the fines are so large. But the main thing you should think about is you're not in the wrong. So you contact this third party and you say, look, let's work something out. You know, let me charge you for using these images. You need other images. I'm not going to charge you the moral rights infringement fee. I'm not going to charge you for flagrancy. I'm not going to charge you for any of the other fees. I just want to charge you for these images, and you can continue using them. That's fine. Give me a credit and I'm happy. And what they will usually do, as Ed mentioned earlier, is 99% of the time, they will understand it. That 1% who don't, well, excuse my French, well, Sodom, basically. You know, they deserve everything they get, and you charge them all the fees you can. You charge them for moral infringement, moral rights for not giving you a credit. You charge them all the other fees that you can, an infringement fee, a detection fee. But for those who understand, you turn a problem into an advantage. And in my experience, you know,
Graham, I would also raise the point that, you know, generally, people tend to be aware of what they should do with photographs in terms of clearing permissions. However, I mean, I've just found a growing and slightly worrying situation where staffing and personnel, we were discussing this the other day, within publishers, historically picture researchers and people who are picture buying were involved with a proper procedural training and an understanding of copyright, licensing, end use, paying a fee, etc., and negotiating that fee. But those roles today, and I don't know quite how it's happened, but they are increasingly tacked onto an administrative or a production or an editorial job without necessarily proper training, and the result of that is a lack of clearance for permissions for use, actually born out of just ignorance, really. So there is a need to educate people, and also there is, because of the whole digitization process, there is a worrying situation where there are a number of orphan works floating around on the web, and people pick them up and think they can just use them without actually trying to track down who the copyright owner is. So sorry to interrupt, Graham, just two other
No, you're right, Sophia. The problem is it's become all too easy for people to use images without checking where they come from, and in those situations, I think there's little excuse. But when it's a client who's been who has worked on a project, sometimes, sometimes in their eyes, they've practiced due diligence. They've contacted your client. They've said, can we use the images? And they get sent the images. So in their eyes, they've done, well, we thought it was okay to use them. So it's a very difficult situation to punish those people and charge them extraordinary fees, because I think I would feel the same. Well, I did what I thought I was meant to do. It's simple as that. So they do need to be charged. They need to be educated. But the people who mainly need to be educated is the original client. They shouldn't have done it in the first place. But there's no good, particularly in the UK, is going in and very hard, because all you're going to do is back someone into a corner and they'll come out fighting. I've had so much experience of this. You charge them a huge fee and they will just say, right, take me to court. You don't want to go to court. It's the last thing you want to do, because you haven't got the time. You don't want to spend the emotional effort to go through this. So to sort of maybe get a lesser fee than maybe that you should have done, maybe sometimes is the better result. And then turning them, as we mentioned earlier, into a client. They need pictures. They use pictures. And once they've been educated, hopefully they'll start using a photographer, and it won't happen again. Once they've had one infringement bill, it's a good steep learning curve. They won't do it again.
Or the threat of a prison sentence.
Yeah.
If you're in America.
Absolutely.
If you're in America, yeah.
And this isn't going to happen anymore, is it? Because we're all going to start issuing terms and conditions when we do a job. Now, how we go about doing that, actually, that reminds me, Henry had a really good idea about this. I think it was an online wedding photographer app. There's a gap in the market there. Someone should do one for architectural photographers where we can have terms.
They're called they're called CRM softwares. It's,
exactly.
Client relationship. It's tools that's allowed to manage contracts and signatures and all that. Yeah. It's it's something. It's an extra tool we have. It's true. There's nothing that works specifically for what we do. So it's a business idea.
There you go. Someone who's good at IT, build one of these things for all of us, and then we can constantly update the terms and conditions for everyone. We can make suggestions on your terms, and we can all work together to get the word out. And then this sort of thing won't happen anymore. People won't infringe copyright because they'll know.
Yeah, but either way, I think that's the key, and the general rule is always, be nice, be aware of what you're saying, and firm at the same time. So I think that's the key with when dealing with these things, but still trying to be nice and understanding. And
it's really easy, Francesco, to get angry about it, which they're your images, and I understand it's a very personal thing to you, but getting angry doesn't help you at the end of the day, because
of course
there is a resolution, and if you get angry with them, they'll just get angry back with you, and no one wins. And so there are ways and means, as I say, of charging a fee and making them understand why you're charging the fee. Then you don't look unreasonable.
I'm just going to show you why you need to be charging proper fees.
You can't give them a credit for breakfast, can't you?
Right? We can't give these guys credits for breakfast. These are my kids. I take it the film's finished.
I think
my wife's away at the moment. She's dancing in Birmingham, so
nice. I think this leads us to the end of our conversation, and I've seen. I mean, first of all, it's great to see that almost everyone stuck till the end of this very nice and informative chat. But I've seen also a bustling chat next to the video. So I think I want to leave the word to Luca now. I was going to try and I mean, I haven't really read what was going on.
Yeah, actually,
much going on, but yeah.
More than a lot of actual questions to the panel, there was a really active discussion among all the people. So it was actually we should save this chat and put it somewhere.
About fees and how different people charge.
There was a question actually that was quite interesting about, we talk about day rate and how you, for example, you incorporate 2 licenses in the day rate, and someone asked, like, when a client comes to you asking the photos after you've already done the shoot, is there, I don't know if you talked about it while I was reading the chat, I'm sorry, but if there is a rule that can be applied to how much charging per image or for set of image, because I know some people do per image, some people do a percentage of the shoot. I don't know, like in your case, I'm talking specifically to Ed, how does it work? If you want to say in your case, or if you know,
I have my way of doing it.
Yeah,
I don't mind sharing. But when we did this view survey, this anonymous survey of fees, what was apparent was the disparity in the way photographers charged. Some photographers would charge an all-inclusive fee. Others would charge a fee plus a separate fee for post-production. Some people would charge per image, and the amount per image would vary massively from sort of £5 to £150. So it's a really grey area, and it's very difficult. I battled with it, trying different things for years, and in the end I worked out that when I looked at my invoice page, all the jobs were kind of coming to the same amount roughly. And so I now have an all-inclusive fee for a set number of shots. And it just keeps things so simple, because my client then knows exactly what they're going to pay at the end of the shoot from what you've quoted. You quote that amount, and at the end of the job, they get an invoice for that amount. And they love that. I always had issues when you send an invoice and then there's all these extras and they're like, oh, hang on a minute, we weren't expecting that. So it just keeps it simple. And it keeps it simple when I'm negotiating fees and talking about licensing. If I'm issuing 2 licenses with that fee, then it's just a 50-50 split. So in answer to someone's question, what do I charge? So if a contractor then comes to me, say just, for example, what was the, say you're charging £1,000 for a shoot. So the person, the architectural practice commissioned the shoot, they get one of the licenses and their client gets the other license, so they've paid £500 each. If a contractor comes and they want the full set of images, I would charge them £500, and then everyone's paid the same. And I'll charge everyone who wants a full set of images £500. I'm just giving this as an example. If someone comes and says, oh, I just want 1 picture, then I would charge £100 for the first picture, because I've got to go and do the admin on it and send it, put it on Dropbox or whatever and send them a link. And then maybe £50 for every picture after that, if it's just a few.
If I can give my experience with this, I think that's a rule that I found easy to apply in every situation, is to charge 10% of the original fee per image.
I mean, I'm not saying
that could, no, I think, because it really depends on your fee structure, what you said, which is great. But if you change your fee structure, it's a bit different. So I found that 10% of the whole shoot per image is it's a good amount to charge. So if your shoot was £800, 1 image is worth £80 for post-shoot license. Or if it's £2,000, it's £200 per image. I think I found this as an easy way to kind of understand how to charge post-shoots. That's my experience.
I think what's interesting there, but both of you, is that so far, me mentioned this earlier, is that you're pretty much, not that there's a right and a wrong, but those are very equal to stock agency fees as well.
Yeah, they're not far apart.
They're not far apart. So you're on the right track, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, so someone also suggested a way of sort of a membership way that you pay a monthly fee. I mean, it's an interesting concept, but I don't know how doable it is to sort of use the photos. So
that sounds like a lot of admin.
Yeah, that's true.
That was introduced a while ago with a sort of subscription basis model within certain agencies, and I'm not sure how successful it was, because the book publishers who really went to town on it, they were using gazillions of pictures that ended up, you know, with individual photographers getting sort of 15, 20p, something like that. So a lot of admin.
And then you're going to get them coming back to you saying, well, I didn't use that picture in the end. You're almost going to become like a stock agency, and there's a lot of admin to go with that, you know.
Another, well, it's not really a question, but a lot of some of the photographers that participated in the chat, they were saying, asking if you think there could be a way to have a standardized sort of terms and condition or a standardized contract, maybe obviously divided by country, because each country has different rules and laws. But do you see something like this as a possibility? Not really a monopoly, obviously, but some more standardized rules, and how could that happen also? That's the...
If only anyone would write one.
I mean, I guess this talk is the beginning of something like that.
It's probably something that we should hammer out amongst ourselves and pass it back and forth, because it's going to benefit all of us. I know we're all in competition, but having a decent set of terms and conditions that we can...
It gives you a platform.
Yeah, it's going to work for all of us. It gives us strength. I mean, we have to be careful that we're not accused of being a, what is it, Graham?
Cartel.
A monopoly, yeah, cartel, yeah.
Yeah.
But you won't be there, because terms and conditions isn't a fee document. It's a terms and conditions document. You know, you can't be a cartel if you're not charging. Your fees may be different or in the same ballpark, but your terms and conditions are, you can't be accused of that, because there's no monetary aspect. We're talking about copyright, licensing, third-party rights. It's a different thing.
So as long as you don't say like you should charge this, and that's it, that's not a cartel.
Exactly. It's a guideline rather than a specific control of monetary gain.
Let me see.
Was there any other
something
question?
we should talk about? I think Graham and I have worked out a really nice set of terms and conditions, just based on things that have come up with clients in the past.
I've written a set of terms and conditions for architectural photographers, and Ed's had them, and various people have had them, and they're available, and they're there. You know, if you want to look at them. I've said it. There you go.
Generous, Graham.
Not for free.
Everyone knows where to get them. You know.
I've got another question by Luke. He asks, any views on discriminate pricing? So meaning many of us work on projects across a wide spectrum of budgets. Would you charge more per image for a luxury penthouse compared to a grassroots community build, for example? So is something doable to charge more or less depending on the client, or?
I don't know the answer to that. I think it's, you base your fees on the usage, what the pictures are going to be used for. I mean, we're only talking about, so far we've only talked about promotional usage, right? You would quote, if someone came to you and said, you know, we love your shot that you did of that building, we want to use it for advertising, which does happen. You know, I sold a picture of a petrol station to a company doing an electric car. But yeah, you know, you might sell an image for advertising, and then that's a whole different rate. I would say, if you're, as a rough guide, and don't shoot me for saying this, but whatever your promotional fee is, which is what we were discussing earlier, your advertising rate, if someone wants to commission you to do an advertising job, should be about double that. And if someone then wants to buy the copyright to those pictures, I don't know, Graham, what would you say? I would double the advertising rate again.
Yeah, I mean, in the glory days of stock libraries, and Sophia would agree, gosh, when someone said to you, I want to buy a picture for advertising, you rubbed your hands together, because, you know, you were charging, well, sometimes 3 times the original rate. You were talking thousands of pounds here just for one image, because the exposure was enormous. But again, those days have gone a little bit. I mean, if you talk about 2 different things, if you're talking about your commission rate for different clients, I think that's a dangerous thing, because you don't want to get a reputation for charging more for one client than you do for the other. It shouldn't really matter who the client is. Those are your rates. You're worth what you're worth, and you have your rates. So it shouldn't matter if you're charging for the biggest architect in the world, or okay, if you're charging for the smallest, they can't afford, you may want to drop your fees. But if you're talking about post-licensing rates, then yes, I would say you don't have in your terms and conditions your advertising rate, because it's a whole different thing. And if you are asked for it, it's another 100% on top of that.
Yeah, again, I would say with advertising, I agree with you, Graham, that it's a whole different ballgame. And again, just think, everybody, about the end use and the context of that end use, because we're talking about days of old with advertising as in great big hoarding type posters in print. Advertising now is a whole digital media in its own right, and that has so many different outlets. You know, we were talking earlier about social media, that just was one aspect. So I think advertising is a whole different ballgame, and it's a very scalable thing according to how many times and where and what countries and territories. So yeah, a different percentage altogether.
I think it's quite important. I may have got this wrong, but the question was, do you charge more for your commission work for a different client? And I don't agree with that. I might be wrong, as I think you should charge the same no matter who your client is.
I agree with that, Graham.
It's a dangerous game, because you could get a reputation for basically chopping and changing. Well, I charge more for this client because they have more money. Yeah. Okay, it's come up now in terms of secondary licensing. Yeah. Okay. Well, you don't know. You only know what the usage is. You don't know who the client is. You can only go on what the usage is. Is it advertising? Language rights, where it's being used, and so that's what you go on. It's very specific parameters, but it's a very grey area. What is advertising? All social media is advertising in some respects. I think the electronic and the social media age has really blurred the lines for what advertising is. Everything, unless it's purely editorial, everything else almost is advertising. You put it on your website, it's advertising. You put it on social media, it's advertising. So I think there's a bit of a danger for some photographers to go, wonderful, advertising, great, let's charge a huge amount of money. But when you actually look what it is, it's blurred. It's a grey area. What kind of advertising do they mean? The day, if it's going to be used in Vogue or in a on a full page spread in Vogue, that's one thing. If it's going to be, a lot of clients might think, I want to use an advertising, but they may simply just mean social media.
Just to clarify, Graham, when you say advertising, do you mean because anything that shows a project, it's a sort of way of advertising it. But technically, when you say advertising, from my understanding, is when you actually pay for the space you're using to show the picture. Isn't that what determines the advertising usage?
Yeah,
that is different from marketing.
Yeah, that used to be called above the line advertising, didn't it? Where you're paying for advertising. But I guess what I meant is that not so many people are using that medium anymore, though. So I think, again, we talk about your clients being educated. I think it's almost advertising's become almost a generic term. It used to mean a very specific thing. You're right, where you pay for advertising, where you're paying for billboard space or magazine space. I think a lot of people now are using the word advertising where they don't actually mean advertising. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a different ballgame. We all know it's advertising is where the real money is. Really.
Yeah, but I think you need to ask the questions. Basically, is what do they actually mean by advertising?
Well, there's also a difference, isn't there, Graham, between trade press advertising. If you're, I don't know, you make windows or whatever, and you're advertising that particular product in the trade press, there's a very different level between that and then huge product endorsements to promote and sell, I don't know, a new electric car, which is going to go on television, it's going to be on big digital hoardings, etc. And that's, you know, a different thing altogether.
Yeah, I think, you know, Sophia and I are probably sounding a bit woolly and grey in some areas with regard to pricing. It's because there is no set answer anymore, is there, Sophia? You have to ask the questions. It's knowing which questions to ask. So is it paid advertising? Is it social media advertising? Is it in trade press? Is it going to be in a national worldwide magazine? Which one is it? And once you have those things, then you know you can start to look at your pricing, because advertising to one person can mean something very different to another person.
Yeah, and repetition and duration are two other things, as well as the territories, because that adds a, you know, a sort of percentage of multiplication. Yeah, different territories, different countries, etc.
Yeah.
Is there any other question, Luca?
Sorry, I'm muted probably.
No.
No, I'm not. No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. So before closing this conversation that has been hopefully useful for, you know, many of you guys, after, you know, we're going to close the conversation. We're going to have a bit of open mic after this, after the recording, if anyone wants to jump in and say hi. But before that, I want to first of all to thank Graham, Ed, and Sophia for taking the time to come and talk to us and bring their experience within this you know, complicated topic of licensing and copyright and all that. And thank you also to everyone who joined the conversation, more than 100 people, which is amazing. And also a special thank you for the ones who want to donate and help us for running this event, which has some costs. So that's very useful for us. And if you guys found it useful for you and you still want to contribute to what we do and what we are going to do, because we're going to have more talks, more events, you can still donate through our website. Or another way for helping us is to go on our newly launched print shop, which is featuring some photographers that we are collaborating with on a project that we are gonna well, it's still you know, undisclosed, but we're gonna tell more about that soon. So we've got this great print shop with limited edition prints and posters. So if you want to help us with running our activities, that's another great way to do that. And that's it pretty much. So thank you everyone again. And yeah, follow us on our website, which is mass-collective.com, or our Instagram, which is at mass.collective. For new events, we're going to have more soon, so stay tuned. And Henry, do you want to say something?
Thanks for coming. That's all, really.
Just because you haven't said much, but you're still...
No, it was a really great talk. I was just managing, having everyone in there, watching the chat, seeing what everyone was saying. So I really appreciated seeing all the comments from everyone there. And yeah, it was great to have so many people participate in this talk. So yeah, and thanks to the panel. Thanks to Luca for taking the questions. So yeah, it's great.
Great. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot.
See you soon.
Yeah. Cheers, everyone.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.